Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Sunday, November 23rd, just about 8:30 in the morning, and this is our week look ahead and payment guesstimate video for our two crypto funds we follow. LFGY, it's YieldMax's crypto industry portfolio option income ETF, and BLOX, it's Nicholas crypto income ETF from XFUNDS. Just a little housekeeping, as always, at ETF_inspector1. Follow me on X, and everything on here points back to the YouTube channel. All right, so it was obviously a terrible week for crypto. LFGY and BLOX are very similar in their holdings, so they're going to have pretty similar charts. LFGY was down $1.64. Hold on, let's go percentage wise, 5.8%. Now a portion of that is the 37 to 38 cent distribution that they made this week, but either way, they dropped $1.64 over the course of the week, so doesn't help. We're waiting for this to rebound. It's been a bad month, 24+% down over the course of the last month. We thought that BLOX was a little bit safer version of LFGY, but over the course of the last week, BLOX dropped 10.5%. What did we just say LFGY was? It's 5.8, so nearly twice the drop. So definitely not feeling like the safer alternative, even though they only pay out 36% annual yield distribution and keep the rest into the fund. So they're just not doing as well. They dropped a little over $2 and have a smaller share price. All right, we'll start with our charts and we'll look at LFGY. We've got more information on LFGY because they share their trades and they update their holdings a little more often. So we'll start with them and we'll end with BLOX. So over the course of the week, LFGY had approximately 300 trades. We did see some buying of some of the normal names. They didn't add or subtract anything from the fund. They just adjusted their allocations. They sold a little bit of Robinhood, bought Circle, MSTR, Block, ETHA, Mercado Libre, Nvidia, and PayPal. That was all on Monday. Tuesday is just options trading. Wednesday the same. Thursday the same. And Friday, I remember, was the same as well. So Monday was the only day where they were adjusting their allocations. We only consider the options trades in our credits and debits. Now, I understand that the other plays into it as well, but I would need 100% of their documentation all the way back from the beginning to know when they're selling, if it's at a gain or a loss, if it's something that they've held in the fund the whole time. I don't know whether they've selected first in, first out, or first in, last out. So rather than just making errors with the numbers, we omit them and we just talk about the options trading for the week. So we understand this is making ballpark numbers. It's not exact. They lost $2 million options trading on Monday, followed up with $86,000. And what, I don't know. I thought I had a description for why they would have, but I don't. So Tuesday they had a credit of $86,000. Wednesday a credit of $1.4 million. Thursday a credit of $917,000, and Friday a credit of $1 million. So on the week they had a realized gain of $1.3 million. So if we use that for our income estimate, our updated outstanding shares, 6,225,000. We divide out the 1.3 million by that, and we get 21.43 cents per share. So that gives us kind of a baseline. That would be by far the lowest payment ever from them. So we don't think that's going to be it. So next they tell us to look to the implied volatility of the fund. To do that, I like to use Market Chameleon. So I just type in each of the different underlyings. I get the updated 30-day IV, punch it into my spreadsheet. So all of this is manual. Then underneath of it, I just show whether it was an increase or a decrease from last week. And I did just realize that I forgot to update these numbers at the bottom. But it's going to be a whole lot more increases than decreases. So before we do that, let's look at the allocation. We've got an average of 4.17%. So let's see what's on the higher side and what's on the lower side. SharpLink's a little low, less than 3%. We've got a 6%er in there with IBIT. So that's on the higher end, maybe the highest. Coin not too far behind. Okay, we've got some low ones. Bitmine, Immersion, and BitDeer. Now it's not that they weren't evenly allocated to, it's that they've dropped in share price so much that they're becoming a smaller portion, even though they weren't originally. All right, but so you've got the the weighting of each on the side. Now, if you download the holdings yourself, you're going to say, hey, those numbers don't match up with the weightings that I'm seeing. I don't use the weightings that they give on their holding download, because it weights everything, including the options, and so sold options hold negative value, so then they have negative weight. And so what I'm doing here is trying to find a way to weight each IV based on how much money is allocated to it. So each of the underlyings takes their market value divided by the sum of all the market values of specifically the underlying shares. So this excludes the cash, the options, and the government funds. This is just, how much is in XYZ plus how much is in SBET, and so on. So that's a different allocation system, but that's also going to that'll evenly factor in how much options money is into each, because they're always doing the maximum amount of options at each one. So again, not a perfect system. It's helping us get a ballpark. All right, so as we go down, bullish decreased this past week to 86.8. Bitmine Immersion increased to 122.6. We're talking about implied volatility here. BitDeer increased to 108%. Cipher Mining, I believe the highest, 135.4 is an increase. CleanSpark decreased to 106.5. Coinbase increased to 69. Cores increased to 99.1%. Circle increased to 87.9. ETHA, iShares Ethereum Trust, increased to 81.9. Galaxy Digital increased to 98.7. GameStop increased to 68.8. Robinhood increased to 72.4. HUT 8 Corp decreased, but it's still high, 124.5. IBIT is an increase to 59.5. Mara increased to 104.8. Melli, Mercado Libre, increased to 41.1. MSTR, now Strategy, increased to 91.1. NU Holdings decreased to 37.2. NVIDIA increased to 51.3. Oprah increased to 44.6. PayPal Holdings increased to 37.9. Riot Platforms decreased to 97.9. SharpLink Gaming increased to an even 100%, and XYZ decreased to 48.4. So ignore these. I forgot to update them, but as we saw, way more increases than decreases. And so what that resulted in was an overall increase from last week's 74.78% average up to this week's 77.64%. We're going to take that, and so that's that formula I talked about. It's multiplying each of the weights by their implied volatility and then adding them all together. So then we're going to use that in conjunction with the closing price of LFGY on Friday. So we know the IV increased from last week, but the share price decreased from last week. What that would result in is actually an increase, 39.58 cents. So now we've got that information, and we need to make our final guess. This is difficult, right? Because when the income estimate doesn't work, they tell us to look to the IV. Generally, when I stray from my IV, I get it wrong. But here's the thing: do I think that LFGY, as they are not quite free falling, but seriously dropping, do I think in a week where they dropped again 5.8%, that they're going to pay more than they paid the week before. Let's see, 17th. So the number they used, where are we? This last one was the 21st, so before that would have been the 14th. So they would have used like a almost $29 share price to make their estimate last week, where this week they're using a $26 share price. I just can't give them an increase from last week, so I may be wrong. I'm going 37 cents, and realistically, I kind of want to go lower, but 37 cents would be their lowest payment ever. Now, last week was 37.96 right there, and then a handful back in September, 37.84. So it's not the lowest by a ton, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 36, 35, 34. But at the same time, IV wise, it could be increased from last week up near 40. So this is a tough one to make the estimate on. I was going back and forth, and I said, look, it really doesn't matter. Just put a number on the page. So that's my guess for this week, 37 cents. Before we switch pages, we'll just talk about share values. They basically decreased most of the week. Obviously, crypto kept dropping, so these are unrealized gains and losses. Dropped 4.3 million on Monday, increased 1.4 million on Tuesday, decreased 3.4 million on Wednesday, decreased 6.8 million on Thursday, and then slight increase of 211,000 on Friday. So overall, the share values within the fund dropped by 13 million. It was not that long ago we were like at 220 to 230 million dollars in assets under management. We're down to 164 million now. When we look at our positioning for options sold within the week, right off the bat, we're not starting off great with bullish. Their calls are sold at 37.50. They're actually in the money 2.8%. So any recovery we get from bullish is capped right from the start unless they close these calls out and sell at a higher strike. Bitmine immersion, $26 closing price, $32.50 is the strike price on this week's calls, 25% out of the money. Bit Deer closed at $10.29. They've got $11 calls sold, 6.9% out. There's $2.2 million in cash, another $2.8 million in government obligation funds, so a little over $5 million. Cipher Mining closed at $14.15. They've got calls sold at $14.50, 2.5% out of the money. CleanSpark is at $9.73. They've got $11.50 calls sold, 18+% out. Coinbase Global closing at $240.41. Their calls are 9.1% out of the money at $262.50. Core Scientific closed at $14.73. They have $16 strike on their calls, 8.6% out. Circle Internet Group closed at $71.34. Their calls, this is a mistake. Let's use this one. That's still the, I'm struggling. What is happening? Sorry about this. So I'm still using the put formula. They were doing puts on these guys last week. Now they are using calls. So if you sold a call at 71.34, or you sold a call at 70 and the price is 71.34, I knew that should have been underwater. It's a different formula for calls than puts. So they're starting in the money 1.8%. ETHA, $20.70 closing, $23 strike price on the calls, 11% out of the money. Galaxy Digital closed at $23.42. They've got $23.50 calls sold. They're 1/3% out, or basically 8 cents. So all these ones that are close, not going to be able to capture very much upside without having to close out the option at a cost. GameStop closed at $20.14. They've sold $20.50 calls, 1.7% out. Robinhood is at $107.30. They sold 108s and 121s. They're 0.6 and 12.7% out. Hut 8 Corp is at $34.34. They sold $36 calls, 4.8% out of the money. IBIT, instead of holding shares, they did some tax loss harvesting. I know I say it every time, but just in case you're new here, so they sold their shares and replaced them with purchasing of deep in the money calls. They're $10 calls expiring in December. So we're really not necessarily treating them like options. We're kind of treating them like the shares, because then they are selling options off of those. Calls are sold at 52. They're 8.4% out of the money, with IBIT closing just under 48. Mara closing a little over $10. I say it every time. I can't wait to get some money in there. I would love to be selling Mara puts right now. That they're literally trading at less than their value of Bitcoin holding, similar to strategy. $11 calls are 9.2% out of the money. MBTX, they don't own any shares. They just have a put debit spread. It's going well for them. They've purchased the 195s for the end of the year. Stock price at 199.8. These have increased very nicely in value for them. The further MBTX drops, the more valuable this trade will turn for LFGY. Mercado Libre closed at $1,951.78. They've sold their calls this week for $1,950, so they are already in the money by 9/100ths, just about 0.1%. They didn't roll on Friday. They rolled prior to Friday and then went back up on Friday. Strategy closing at 170.50. It wasn't that long ago. They were at twice this price. Calls are sold at 177.50 and 195, 4 and 14% out. NU Holdings, 15.90 closing price, 15.50 sold strike price. They're 2.5% in the money. NVIDIA is at 178.88 with 180 as their strike price on their calls. That's only $1.12 or 0.6% out of the money. Opera, these are out. They only trade monthlies on these, so they are for December 19th. They've sold calls at 14, just about 8% out of the money, with the closing just under 13. But they've also sold puts at 13. Those are already in the money, 0.2%. PayPal closed a little over $60.50. They've got $58 puts sold. This is another one a little bit different than the normal. They're selling puts instead of calls. It's a put spread, 4.2% out of the money. Riot Platforms. And so what that means, though, is PayPal can go up to the moon and they will capture 100% of the upward swing because they've only sold puts on the downside. If it drops, then not only do their share values drop, but they have to pay to close out their put spread. But if it goes up, they win their options and they capture 100% upside. Riot Platforms, 12.71 closing price, 13.50 strike price on the calls, 6.2% out. SharpLink Gaming closing at 9.52. They have $10 calls sold, 5% out of the money. And Block, 61.96 closing price with a $62 strike price on the calls. They are 4 cents out of the money. You can ignore that. That's still taking in changes from Friday. Obviously, things aren't changing officially on the weekend. We already talked about it. 164 million in assets under management. People sold out of the fund on Friday, 125,000 shares, bringing it down to 6,225,000 outstanding shares, which makes the NAV $26.38, trading at about a 13-cent premium to that. Last week they paid 37.96 cents per share, but again, we think that's going down this week. The average call, where this is like 90% selling calls, the average sold call is 6% out of the money, meaning in general, LFGY can capture a nice rebound from its underlyings, but we do have a couple of outliers that are already in the money where we won't be able to capture any upward movement without paying to close out the options. All right, that is everything we've got for LFGY. Just a reminder, 37 cents is the estimate, and I'm not very confident on that one. Okay, next is Blocks. So Blocks, we've got, they are also a title company. Title is like the parent company, I guess you would say. And if you take a look at the team, you're going to see some familiar faces to YieldMax, right? Jay Pestrochelli, Scott Snyder. I think Chris Mullins involved on both too, but I'm not positive. But David Nicholas is the main man over here. Very nice guy. If you didn't see, let's see if I can find it quickly. They actually reached out to me recently just because I make some videos covering their stuff, and they sent me a little gift. Let's see if I can find it. I might not be able to find it. I looked for it. I think I looked for it before and couldn't find it either. I don't know, but I posted a picture of it. They sent me a Blocks hat in the mail, so I thought that was pretty cool. They said it was just a thank you. Yeah, I can't find it. That was a shame, though. We just saw recently them celebrating 200 million in assets under management right before the market dropped. So when we take a look at their holdings now, they don't necessarily update their holdings page. They basically do it the next trading morning. So this information is all as of Friday morning, so it doesn't take into account the moves on Friday, which is why our closing price is 1704, but our NAV is 1738, because things went down for them on Friday, but we won't get those results until Monday morning, since it's non-trading days. So the assets under management is obviously dropped on Friday, but we just give whatever information we have. There is no changes to the holdings themselves. I like to point those out. So everything that was in there last week is in there this week. And then, let's see, I forgot to highlight it, but we obviously have our major holdings. Fidelity-wise, Bitcoin Fund is a 16%er, similar to HODL. Van Eck Bitcoin ETF, 32+% just between those two, and then iShares Ethereum Trust bringing us up over 40% just out of the top three holdings. So not in any way evenly allocated over here. Oh, we got Bitfarm in there, no options traded. Bullish, they've got in there. You're going to see a whole lot of similar names to LFGY. They're trading put spreads on Bullish with a 36.50 strike price. Bitmine Immersion, we've got lots of put spreads in here, selling 27s, 29.50s, and 32.50s. Webull, this is another one that I like to trade wheel strategy on. So I would love to be selling some bull and some Mara puts right now. Selling at $8.50 put on that put spread. Cipher Mining. If you can't tell, I'm in the basement, so somebody upstairs just flush the toilet or something. You can hear water running through the pipes. All right, Cipher Mining, put spreads again. We're selling 15.50s, 15s, and 14.50s. Coinbase, put spreads as well, selling 242.50s and 260s. Circle Internet Group, more put spreads, selling 70s and 79s. Core Weave, put spreads again, selling 76s and 77s. ETHA, it's actually a call spread, so they're selling the 23.50 on that. The FBTC, it's a call spread there as well, selling the $81 calls. Galaxy Digital, back to put spreads, selling 25.50s and 26s. No trading options on HODL. One of these weeks, maybe I'll actually look it up to see if they have options. I would assume they do. Robinhood, we got a little bit. We've got, now that's strange. I think we have, yeah. So this is where, like, they've got to be talking, right? They both, LFGY from YieldMax and Blocks from XFUNDS have purchased $50 deep in the money calls on Robinhood. These expire December 19th. These do too. So they literally have the exact same purchase. I mean, we do know it's the same traders, so, or some of the same traders, head traders. But they're selling puts at 108. They've also purchased a deep in the money call at 50. So if Hood gets any kind of a recovery, that's going to do well. Hut 8 Corp, more put spreads, selling 34s, 35s, and 38s. Iron Limited, put spreads again, selling 44s and 47.50s. Mara Holdings, more put spreads, selling 11.50s, 12s, and 12.50s. Similar to LFGY, they trade options on MBTX, but they don't own any shares. So these are call spreads, selling the 220s and the 225s. Strategy, we're back to put spreads again, selling 177.50s and 200s. Whew. So selling a $200 put there, would we say MSTR is at like 170? Yeah. Oof. That one's $30 underwater plus extrinsic value. NVIDIA, we got put spreads selling the 187.50s. These are actually expired. This is like we said, even though it's Sunday, they haven't updated from Friday morning yet. So everything that took place on Friday during the day hasn't factored over here yet. So we've got put spreads at 185 for NVIDIA. Riot Platforms selling puts at 13.50 and 14.50. And Taiwan Semiconductor, these are expired, but these are not. Put spreads selling the 280. All right, from last week, we see an increase. So people still buying into the fund, buying down their average. 225,000 new shares, bringing it up to 9,750,000. Like we saw, closing price 1704. Assets under management 169 million. That is just the total of all these market values. But again, blocks went down on Friday. Their underlyings went down, so that is going to be a lower number, obviously, because if the NAV was 1738, people would be buying it the price back up to 1738. It wouldn't be trading down at 1704. They just announced, as you saw when we scroll back up, 13.15 cents per share, right? That went X on Friday and will pay on Monday. It's always going to be 36%. So the guesstimate is really not so much of a guesstimate as much as just, okay, now at our current share price value, if it holds here, 36% would be 11.8. So it's just kind of helping you understand what you can expect as far as your payment. So if the share price of blocks kind of trickles up throughout the week, then expect upwards of 11.8 or up from more than 11.8%. And if the share price trickles down, expect less than 11.8 cents. We already talked about the X date and the payable date. So far this year, they've paid out approximately $3.33, averaging about 16.67 cents per share. I don't know if they have all their payments. I don't think. Yeah, that's not every single payment for sure. But yeah, there was a time when we were getting 18s and 19s. Now we're getting 13s and maybe 11. So that is all I have for you for LFGY and blocks. Hopefully crypto can make a little bit of a recovery this week, but it doesn't feel like it. So seems like there's more pain coming, but I don't know anything. I'm just guessing. All right, I just provide information. So I've got a dad joke before we get out of here as a thank you for watching my video. So dad joke of the day. I made my wife's dreams come true, and we got married in a castle. But you wouldn't have known it from the look on her face as we were bouncing around. All right, thank you. Have a good end of your weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video.